Hello, everyone. This is Jeremiah Roberts, one of the co-hosts here at Cultish. I want to give you a heartfelt thanks for those of you who have generously given and supported our ministry the last few months. It's been very, very helpful. We do, however, need additional support as we head into 2025. Currently, we are operating roughly around 35 to 40% of what we need to operate on a monthly basis. So if you've been blessed by our content that we've been able to release to you, we'd ask that you would prayerfully consider partnering with us and be part of the mission to impact and change lives. Go to thecultistshow.com. There is a donate tab. You can donate one time. You can become a monthly supporter. All that goes directly towards helping us create more content. It'll allow Andrew to support his family as he is also a pastor up in Utah. And it would allow us to continue this important mission to engage the kingdom of the cults. So all that being said, enjoy this next podcast. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Cultish, Entering the Kingdom of the Cults. My name is Jeremiah Roberts, one of the co-hosts here. I am super excited for this episode. This has been long awaited. First of all, before I get started, I am coming to you from Georgia in a super secret location inside of a barn. It may or may not be an Airbnb. That's all I'll say. Been on the road, we're doing some on the road show podcasts, have a lot of fun here. Andrew, of course, is back in his super secret headquarters back in Utah. I'll be back in Utah again soon. Andrew, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, and I'm just glad that you finally are in a super secret farm quarters. I think that's pretty cool. There's probably horses by you, cows, whatever's going on. You're moving along, so praise God for that.
Somewhere in the middle, somewhere in Georgia, but really excited for this conversation. Awesome. So we are here with our good friend, Jordan Healy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, but I'm feeling a little left out of this super secret club.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Really excited to talk to you. So, Jordan, we met about 2 years ago online. I was one of the many recipients of a post that came up on my Facebook feed. This is about 2 years ago. We'll put up a little screenshot that just maybe it would be like a little time capsule. You kind of went out of nowhere. You had this whole story. And you did this post about kind of like your story, your testimony, and it went viral. So just tell us about what prompted you to do that. This is where your story coming out of the New Age and the occult. You did this viral post. We have the screenshot right here. Why did you write that post, and tell us about the reaction to it?
Yeah, so I was actually at the time, so before I met Christ, I was running a Facebook group of about 500 people. I had a New Age business, and one day after meeting Christ, I shut my business down, and everyone, I had all of these people who were following me and in my Facebook group that had no idea what was going on. And so I was like feeling like I needed to explain kind of why I shut my group down, what was going on in my life, and I wasn't sure how to do that. So I had been praying about it, and I had been asking people at church to pray for me and to pray about how to do that and what to say. And I actually was just prompted by the Holy Spirit one day. It just came pouring out of me. And so my intention was I was just going to write this little blurb about what had happened in my life, what Christ had done in my life, and the new creation he created in me from being in the New Age to following him. And I thought that maybe 100 people would see this post, and maybe 75% of them wouldn't like it, and 25% of them would be supportive. I was not expecting at all to see the post go viral. And so that was a big surprise to me and took a lot of getting used to, because I was receiving a lot of hate. I got a lot of feedback from people, that just came out of the woodwork, that were saying things that I was just like, whoa, what's going on here? And so I had people from church just praying for me and giving me godly advice to kind of stay out of the comments, because I was like, I think I need to take it down. I think I need to take this post down. And they were like, no, it's reaching so many people. So I really had to realize that it wasn't about me at all, and that
Mhm.
God, this was God's battle to fight, and so I just had to step aside.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And what was really interesting too in the post is that, and again, you're just writing from the heart, and you talked about what, God had done in your life and trying to be honest and transparent with people, but you gave kind of a whole like resume of just stuff that you were in, and we're going to kind of unpack that. Can you give everyone just a super Cliff Notes interview, like just maybe describing kind of like what was sort of the things you got into, just generally speaking, when you're in the New Age? Because when I first read it, I'm like, this is a pretty extensive resume of a whole broad variety of different practices.
Well, and as you know, in the New Age, it is just such an umbrella term for all of these different things that people kind of just pick and choose that suits their narrative, suits their type of spirituality. And so I did what I thought was suited me best. And so, I mean, I did so many things from I became a certified yoga teacher. I was a certified Reiki Master. I had an obsession with crystals and crystal healing. I took mediumship classes. I also performed lots of rituals and spells, and I did new moon and full moon ceremonies. And I unpacked all of this stuff I created a whole business around it and opened a business around it. So, you name it, I either dabbled in it or I went full force into it.
Mm, yeah. No, Andrew, did you want to? What questions do you have as we sort of what are your thoughts as we unpack this conversation with Jordan here?
Yeah, thinking back at your post, what vein did you hit that makes you think that it might have went viral, and what were some of the themes within the post that you think that a lot of people were either drawn to or they were upset at?
It's a really great question. I think a lot of people, New Age has just grown so much. It's not new, but it's grown a lot and become really popular. It's also creeping into the church. And so I think people who are dabbling in New Age practices probably saw that I was saying, don't do this. And, I went from just one extreme to what they were seeing as another extreme. I saw people, saying, oh, she just has a mental illness, that she's just grasping at anything. And so I think it was just people taking things personally and probably feeling convicted in their own right and not wanting to be held responsible and accountable to what they're dabbling in. Um, and seeing me say, hey, I've been here, I've done this, I was in this for 13 years, and I'm telling you, this is not the way. And I know from experience when I was in the New Age, people telling me that I was doing something wrong. Anybody who wanted to talk to me about Jesus, I was like, no, I was very allergic to that. So I could definitely see myself in some of these reactions where people just don't want to be told what to do. People want to be validated. And I think sometimes validation comes in the wrong form where they're doing things like occultic practices and they just want to be told that no matter what they're doing, they're following their heart and they're right. And so nobody likes to be told that they're wrong. And I think I struck a chord there. And I mean, for as long as we know, people have rejected Jesus. And so you bring Jesus into the conversation, and that
Mhm.
definitely strikes a chord.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. It's kind of interesting too. I mean, maybe you can give me your thoughts on this too, maybe because, social media is interesting. You think, whenever a post goes viral, people kind of get really caught up in it with it for, a few days or maybe even 24 hours or a week. And then it's sort of on to the next thing. And there's always that emotion kind of like getting caught up in it. So I get with the idea of you like having to step away. Like I've never had anything on my personal page go that viral. I definitely would be a little bit anxious and, and whatnot if that happened to me. But I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I'm actually on your post now. I pulled it up. So like, if you look at the reactions, even like on the comments, the laugh reaction ratio to even people saying, praise God for this awesome testimony, or even all the positivity, like the laughs are way out doing like the heart. So take that as you will, it's social media, It's, there's realms in which it's somewhat an artificial form of communication. But why do you think like some people would just sort of jeer, laugh, and mock? I don't know. Have you put any kind of thought into that as far as just the reaction? Or do you think about it differently than you did when you did the post?
I definitely find it to be like spiritual warfare, that it's like people just they want a reaction from you because you hit a button in them. So for me, I didn't realize at the time, I'm like, wow, I think people's demons are being stirred up and they're reacting. And so the only way they know how to come back at that is to laugh and to mock. And so I had to step back and take myself out of it and say, this actually isn't anything to do with me. It doesn't have anything to do with me. These people don't know me as a person. It truly is the Lord's battle. And yeah, like I said, you bring Jesus into it and people they have visceral reactions. And so I think that's what those laughing reactions are all about.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. And speaking of like the spiritual warfare aspect of it, that's a really emphasis we're going to make on this series. And this is the first part of this conversation, is really just understanding your story, but also your story is a reflection of what is happening with many people in the New Age and the occult, where they are getting saved by the droves coming out of the occult, and praise God for that. But what your experiences are when were in the occult is inherently supernatural. Like your experiences that occurred and that you dealt with, that we're going to talk about, they're real. They're unequivocally real experiences, not just something you hallucinate in your head, but just because it's real doesn't mean it's necessarily good. And we're definitely going to get into that. Andrew, what are your thoughts real quickly when it comes to even you as a pastoral perspective, dealing with someone who's dabbling in stuff? Like what's the importance of understanding the reality of the supernatural and actually believing that when you're talking with someone who's dabbling in something they shouldn't be dabbling in?
Yeah, I do believe that the scriptures are very clear in terms of talking with someone who is coming to Christ or has come to Christ and they came out of the occult, practiced maybe Hermetic traditions, ritual magic, things of that nature. It's crucial for us to understand that people experience things, that there is a place called the waterless places where the enemy lurks, right? And just because someone experiences something doesn't make the knowledge that they gathered from this experience true knowledge, but it also doesn't mean that since it's not true knowledge, we should just discredit everything that they experienced, right? We have to help them unpack and understand and push forward and persevere through the experience and then show them the revelation knowledge through Jesus Christ in his word and walk them through what they have gone through. Like for example, Jordan, when she made that post, it went viral. You said there's more laugh reacts. Well, the truth is that she is now born again in Christ Jesus, right? Someone who is spiritually dead doesn't understand what it means to be born again. And a testimony is typically a testimony of just that. The old Jordan is dead and gone and the new one has come, right? Just as like a quick encouragement for you, these people who want to laugh, react, or mock, they're just doing what spiritually dead people do. Unfortunately, of course, they need the gospel, number one. But what do? They act like the accuser. They want to bring up things maybe from your past or the things that you used to do. Look at these things and sit and mock. But the truth is that Jesus says he took the record of debt that stood against you. This is in Colossians, right? Picture that record of debt longer than a CVS pharmacy receipt or whatever. Like it's long, but it said he set it aside and he nailed it to the cross, canceling that record of debt. But people who don't know God and who are not born again want to bring all of that kind of stuff back up and mock and laugh. They're just doing what children of wrath do. And so when Jesus is brought into the equation of being born again, someone who does not have salvation in Jesus Christ cannot fathom forgiveness of that magnitude. Right? And what's beautiful about the Christian is that we're able to still even extend that forgiveness when people mock and jeered us, because the truth is like she said, it's not me that they hate. They're just mad at the truth of what Jesus offers because they're looking to give something other than Christ to God, which is their own works to try to satisfy their broken relationship with him, but it won't work. So in terms of speaking with someone who came out of the occult, we have to be very sensitive to the fact that they did experience real things, but we have to untangle those things in the light of God's revelation so that they can renew their mind and walk in the newness of life. Read the book of Ephesians, man. Ephesians is all about Paul writing to the church in Ephesus that used to practice the occult, right? They were Gentiles. Now they're grafted into the covenant. And he's telling them, hey, you have the very same promises of those who are Jewish believers. You are grafted into the blood of Jesus Christ because it's the gospel which saves. Now put away all of the old self, the old practices, and practice walking in the newness of life. So you can read more about the church in Ephesus in the book of Acts. But essentially, someone coming out of the New Age is doing the exact same walk as the church from the book of Ephesians and Colossians. They're coming out of the occult, and they're learning to walk in the newness of life.
No, that's no. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew. So, Jordan, what I would like to do is maybe kind of go back down memory lane. It's always interesting with every ex-New Ager that we speak with to see sort of what the origin story is. What was the gateway to getting into the occult? We're giving an emphasis on the reality of the supernatural and the unseen realm. You told me just a little bit about when we were talking on the phone prior to this podcast that a lot of it had to do with exposure to demons when you're around 8 years old, and that sort of creates some curiosity about what's really going on behind the scenes, supernaturally speaking. Can you elaborate that or kind of bring that into that part of it during your childhood?
Yeah, I definitely feel that I've always been sensitive to the spiritual realm at a very young age. I remember seeing shadows and things like that at 5 years old. And, you think, oh, well, you were a kid, you see things and have really creative imaginations. But the earliest memory I have and the clearest memory I have of actually encountering a demon was when I was 8 years old. I had started going to church with my best friend and her family. I didn't grow up in a religious household and never went to church before. And her family started taking me with them. And so I was really curious. I ended up getting a children's Bible and asking lots of questions and not understanding everything that I was experiencing at church. And so my friend and I were having a sleepover, and we were in this really awesome tent bed. So it was like a tent that went over the mattress, and we were playing Barbies inside this tent. And we were talking about God, and she was telling me about what it means to let God into your heart and what it means to be saved. And she was explaining to me the best way an 8-year-old can, all of those things. And so I was asking questions, and we're having this great conversation about God. And we had seen, I think she had gotten up and then come back to the room. And when she came back in the room, we went back to playing Barbies, and we had looked outside the tent because we had both seen something, and we saw this shadowy, dark figure, this being that was kind of creeping around the room. And both of us saw it. It was very real. It was very tangible. We started throwing our Barbies at it, and it wasn't really doing anything. It was kind of like moving still, but not going away. And I remember her rebuking it and saying, "In the name of Jesus, we rebuke you." And I was holding her hand and not exactly knowing what that meant, but she kept saying it. And the more she said it, the entity had gone and left. And so after that had happened, we kind of talked together like, what the heck was that? We both saw it was both of our accounts, even to this day, 30 years later, we have recounted this story and said, do I remember this correctly? Because, it's 30 years ago that we we had this encounter with this demon. And sometimes I think too, the enemy likes to make you think that maybe you were just crazy, or maybe you were just a child and you had a creative mind. But we both remember the story exactly the same way. And it was very real. And it makes sense now, being a Christian and as an adult, to know that the conversation we were having about God and letting God into your heart and having a relationship with Jesus, like what all of that meant, it makes sense that we would see something like that.
So thinking about that dark figure and your family life, like bring us into your family life prior to being 8. My question would be, do you think this dark figure was one that was following you around specifically, right? Trying to cause distraction while the gospel's being brought up. And number 2, what was your family life like that would invite something like that, if that be the case?
Yeah, totally, because I wasn't exposed to God. I wasn't exposed to church or anything of the sort when I was a child. I came from a really broken home. I didn't know my biological father, and I didn't know that I didn't know my biological father until I was 14 years old. So, my mom was a single mom. She was very young when she had me. She was pregnant with me at 16 years old. And we struggled. We struggled hard. And so my childhood was really rough. And I think to go through that, to have such a hard childhood, to suffer from childhood trauma, to my mom being a really young mom, single, trying to figure it all out on her own. To have the Lord come in to the equation, I think for sure. The enemy was like, no way, no way. So I don't know that it was necessarily me that this demon might have been following around, but possibly the idea of God coming into our family in such a broken home, with so much, I mean, it was really hard. It was me and my 2 younger brothers, and we had it rough. And so I think to have God come into a situation like that, it's, I could just see redemption. I could see love that probably none of us had felt at that point ever in our lives, if we were to come to know God. So yeah, I think it was probably the enemy's way to stop that from happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your mom or no one didn't practice any of the occult or anything like that?
No.
Okay. So after that situation happened and you're with your friend, what started happening in your life after that? For me, man, if I'm thinking back to when I was 8 years old, growing up in like a Christian household and going to Christian school and stuff, I'd be absolutely terrified. I remember I was so terrified of the demonic as a child, probably more than I should have been. What happened? Was that like a did that propel you forward into something else? Like, did it get you thinking? Bring us more into your story there.
Yeah, the crazy part about that is that I had a desire to read my children's Bible, but I was scared. So after that happened, I brought my Bible home, and in quiet moments, I felt like I wanted to read it, but I was like, I can't read it. What if that happens again? So I was so scared of what would happen or what I might see, or, if that manifestation would come back again, that I remember being like, I think I can only read this if I go to church with my friend. I'm not going to read this in my bedroom, especially not alone at night. So I was definitely really scared, and it did stop me from reading the Bible. I continued to go to church with my friend and her family, but I had a wall up for sure.
Yeah. So let's break this, into the section from 8 to, let's say, 13 years old. Like, what was your life like from 8 to 13 then? Did other weird things happen in different areas? Because I would assume that, being a child, being so young, you're just still going to church, stuff like that, not reading the Bible because you don't want these things to appear again. Anything else weird happened during that time?
Yeah, I would say during those ages, it was tough because I was helping to raise my 2 younger brothers. It was, I didn't have really a shot at being a kid. I was really just only a kid when I was spending the night at a friend's house. So between 8 and 13, even before that, I used to sleepwalk. My mom told me that I started sleepwalking probably from the age of 4 on, and I sleptwalk all through my teen years. I also used to have night terrors. So I remember times my mom would come home at night and she would tell me about seeing me at the foot of my bed curled in the fetal position, and I would be saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And she would have to try to wake me up. So I definitely had uh, trouble sleeping. I would be afraid sometimes to sleep because I knew that I might have night terrors like I did. Um, and I never remembered sleepwalking. I never remembered anything that happened when I slept walked either. So yeah, I definitely felt like I was really sensitive to just not wanting not wanting to see things, not wanting to hear things, but I still would. And so a lot of times when I would go to bed at night, I would still hear things and see things. And I remember that I would pray that prayer that, that generic prayer that I learned as a kid. Now I lay me down to sleep, that prayer, and that would make me feel better going to sleep. But um, I felt like that was my protection against what might happen to me if I go to sleep without saying that prayer. And sometimes, I would still have night terrors, but yeah.
Was it like that? Like for me, I'm thinking back in my childhood, like nighttime was the terrifying time for me. Was it kind of like that for you? Did you always worry about nighttime? Was it always just on, nighttime's coming, bedtime's coming? Was it kind of like that for you?
Totally, totally. Because I also, I said I didn't know that my biological father wasn't my biological father until I was 14 because my brothers had a different father, but he came into my life when I was 1 and he passed away when I was 14. And after he had passed away, I had experienced a ton of supernatural activity that I thought was him. So I had a stereo that was that was in my room, that was not plugged in, that did not have batteries in it, and it would turn on by itself in the middle of the night. And yeah, I remember another time coming home from grocery shopping with my mom, and we were at the door about to come into the house, and we heard talking inside. And my mom was like, "Didn't I shut the TV off before we left?" And she was always very diligent about, like, we lock all the windows, we lock all the doors, we turn off all electronics. And sure enough, we walked in the house and the stereo was on. And so there would be things like that were happening all of the time. And so I used to think that that was my stepfather and that he was manifesting in this way. And so I also used to dream that I was going to see him, and that would scare me too. And so I would try not to, I was just try not to think about that before I went to bed at night. So yeah, I experienced a lot of supernatural activity through all ages of my childhood.
Wow. Yeah. I can totally relate to that in many different areas. Like, I don't think I was like super sensitive to the waterless places, but I do remember, like, I did grow up in a Christian household, right? But there was one point in our life where my older brother actually started dabbling in like satanic worship. And I remember him very specifically talking to me about it. And that's when things got really weird in our household. Like, I had multiple demonic dreams when I was a child. And I wonder how much you relate with this, where I'd be dreaming and all of a sudden I would hear like crazy demonic growls, or like it would be a repeating dream where I would notice something is out of place. And I think I'm around like 10 years old when this is happening. And in my dream, I'd be like, why is this moving? I didn't move it. And then all of a sudden I just feel like just something overwhelm me in my dream and just hear like a demonic scream or cry, and I'd wake up. Weird things too. Like, I remember we had a shower radio, surprise, surprise. A lot of people have them shower radios, right? And, I was sitting there taking a shower, and all of a sudden it changed. It changed the station like all by itself and started playing this, like, this isn't a dream, this like really happened, playing like this creepy music. And this was at our house in Albuquerque. And whenever I think about living there, I still have this ominous feeling of just something that was evil stalking our family in that home that specifically surrounded my brother and the things that he was doing during that time. Do you relate with any of that?
Oh yeah, those dreams sound very familiar to me. I definitely can relate to that. And the growling, I mean, I even experienced that recently, right before I became a Christian. I was extremely oppressed I experienced sleep paralysis, and in those sleep paralysis episodes, I would hear growling, I would hear whispers, I could see and hear things that were happening, but couldn't say anything or couldn't move. So that happened really recently. But even as a child, I remember having really, night terrors alone are demonic. And I remember seeing different entities, seeing different beings, hearing things in my sleep, and waking up sometimes screaming. I would wake myself up by screaming. So I can totally relate to that.
And you mentioned about the relationship with your father-in-law. What was that again? You said it was that you found out your father was not your biological father, at least the one you thought was.
Yeah, so I didn't know that my brother's father, I did not know that he wasn't my biological father. And so
Mm.
I didn't know that until I was 13 years old when he passed away.
Mm. Okay. And just that relationship with your family of origin, I know, how did that play a role, or did that play a role at all as far as you seeking? You mentioned you had some friends and that experience, that supernatural experience, and them even reading out the Bible and the rebuking this demon. And I can only imagine as an 8-year-old trying to process that. But then as you're going into adolescence, having just sort of all this dysfunction, when you think about how the way the home is supposed to be for children, especially now with being a new father, it's like that's supposed to be a safe haven. So I can only imagine the role, how that played, and how did that affect sort of like you sort of like seeking for truth, and maybe did that create like a bad talk about that?
Totally. Totally did. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a broken home. I didn't know that my father, who I thought was my father, wasn't my father. Um, and that my brothers were my half brothers growing up. I didn't know any of this. I felt like I'd been lied to
Yeah.
my whole life, which I had been by my entire family. I mean, extended family knew, obviously. And I never knew. So, yeah, it was really hard for me to trust people. I had such a hard time feeling like I fit in anywhere because we also moved a lot as a kid because my stepfather was in the military. And so we moved around a lot and I didn't fit in anywhere. I couldn't make friends for too long because we would always be moving and moving in and out of different spaces and different places. And I actually remember I was 5 years old when I got my first crystals.
Mm.
My stepfather was re-enlisted in the Navy at the Garden of the Gods in Colorado, and I got my first bag of crystals
Mm.
there at 5 years old. And so it piqued an interest in me from that point on, especially because I was having these supernatural experiences. I knew there was something more than myself. And I was seeking
Yeah.
truth because I was so lied to my whole life by my family. So I was constantly seeking the truth and constantly seeking, okay, there's something bigger here than just me and just this little um, this little story that I know within my family, right? So
Right.
yeah, it did cause me to go looking.
Um, and then and so the looking at it transitioned into eventually headed over to Massachusetts, but not just anywhere in Massachusetts, Salem, Massachusetts. So when I was reading that, I'm like, wait a minute, that place that rings a bell. There's a little familiarity there. So talk about that. Like, why Salem, and what was the catalyst when we went from there?
Yeah, I ended up moving to Salem, Massachusetts when I was 19 years old. I left my home in New York, upstate New York, and left my family behind and thought I can make a life here. I can focus on myself and not take care of my family. And so at 19, I packed my bags and I left. And it
Mhm.
really suited me because as most people know, Salem, Massachusetts is famous for the witch trials, and it has a heavy occultic background. You find a psychic medium on every corner. There's a crystal shop on every corner. There's a tarot
Oh,
card reader
wow.
on every corner. Yeah, it definitely suited me for where I was at. And it kind of snowballed from there because I was running away from my life and my childhood and running away from my family and moving into this new place, I found myself super angry. I was angry and I didn't know why I was so angry. And so I started seeking therapy for the first time. And so I saw a therapist when I was 23 years old. And I walked in just like, I'm so angry. I don't know why I'm angry, but that's why I'm here. And she was like, oh, you're in the right place. And so as we got to working together, as most therapists I find these days that aren't Christian recommend yoga and meditation and new age practices to relieve stress and to deal with anger. And so eventually I was encouraged enough to try it. And once I realized that there was a spiritual aspect to yoga and meditation and kind of fit my interests in the occult and fit where I was at in Salem, Massachusetts, I kind of thought, oh, this is all just coming together so well. And, I am making this new life and I am finding these new interests. Yeah. And I did have a stint in college. So even though I was 19, I moved to Salem. I ended up going to Salem State College. And I did have a stint where I joined Cru, the Campus Crusades for Christ on campus. And I thought, because I was such a seeker and I was looking for the truth, even though I was dabbling in some of these new age practices, I did join Cru on campus. And I wanted to understand. I bought a Bible, I bought some literature, I bought a bunch of stuff to try to understand more. But I ended up getting really hurt by people in the group. And it was a terrible situation that I ended up in. And I thought, you know what? If this is what God's people do, if this is how God's people act, if this is how they treat other people when they say they're so loving, when they say they're non-judgmental, then I want nothing to do with it. So I ended up throwing out all of my Bibles, throwing out all of the books, everything I had got. And I was just so discouraged and was like, I want absolutely nothing to do with this. And so I ended up going down the New Age route and, taking my therapist's advice. I got into yoga, I got into Reiki and meditation and all of the things. And so from 23 years old, it snowballed for 13 years.
Yeah, take us back to talking with the therapist, talking about anger, suggestions with yoga. Like if you can go back into that mindset, like what did you think was happening during the yoga practice that was resolving you of your anger? Can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, I was definitely a counterfeit and I was definitely deceived because I thought learning about all of these different energy, chakras that were in our body, these energy spaces in our body, that if I could just clear them of the stress and the anxiety and the anger, that, I was helping myself, I was curing myself, and I would feel better. The crazy part about it and the thing that makes it so deceitful is that it does feel good and it does work for a period of time. And so, as we know, the devil masquerades as an angel of light. And so I definitely was like, oh, I was all love and light after that and felt like, the more yoga I do, the more therapy I do, the more meditation I do, the better I feel. But I also subscribed to the mentality that the more healing that I did, the better off the whole would be, so that if I was healing, then I was raising the vibration of the planet and I was raising the vibration of the collective people and other people's healing. So I felt like I was doing a service to myself, but that I was also helping other people just by doing this work myself. Which now, back on, I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what's really interesting, Jordan, is that I think what's always interesting is that for many people who do get into the New Age or the occult, whatever branch it is, whether the catalyst is yoga or Reiki and all those things you mentioned, you could flip out yoga into any of the other practices you mentioned, that could have been the beginning catalyst. But all those things came about as you getting into yoga. What I always find interesting is that when you go into a place like a Whole Foods, if we do a little show and tell here, I've got a kombucha here in front of me. I got at the Sprouts Farmers Market, but even on here is the Lotus, and the flavor is called Sacred Life, and it's a drink, kind of like kombucha's got some probiotics, some other stuff that's good for me. But what ends up happening, I think, is a lot of times you have all these things that initially seem positive, even real. Like, yeah, for sure, yoga is going to have some positive physical effects. You're going to have more flexibility. You're maybe not are going to have a little more bodily function and whatnot. But there's always a caboose that attaches, even if it's 90% real world and okay. That's always that microcosm, that at least the catalyst to start it off, is what hooks people in many a times. Can you just comment on that, what your thoughts were on that for a minute?
Totally. I actually was just in Whole Foods the other day, and I saw I actually saw this popcorn called Lesser Evil popcorn, and it has a Buddha on the front of it.
Mm.
And so, yeah, you're like looking at the ingredients and you're like, wow, okay, it seems like a much healthier, better option for
Right.
me. And so you feel like I'm doing a good thing by buying this, but I was like, oh man, like the devil is he's just creeping into all different,
Mm.
every aspect of our lives, right? Like you can't even go to the grocery store and pick out a healthy popcorn without it feeling demonic.
Right, right. And then what I'm like intrigued by too is that as we kind of go unravel this, is that I think many times too it seems to be very positive on when you're just trying to do so, you're in the interest of self improvement. Like, you didn't go to your therapist to go down all these rabbit holes to become one with the universe and become this attempted divine goddess. You just wanted to deal with your anger issues. Like, you're dealing with a deeply rooted problem, but then you go down this rabbit hole. So what is it like? What are some of the dangers? Like, was there a time where it seemed positive and then it began to shift a little bit? Where like, this is really, what was like maybe the other edge, the other edge of the looking glass? Like, walk us into that.
Totally. I felt like I was doing something so positive. I thought that I was helping myself. And if I was ultimately helping myself, I could pour from a more filled cup and help other people. Because if I was angry and I was walking around angry all the time, then what help was I to other people? So getting into therapy and yoga and meditation and all the things, I thought, wow, I am gaining all of this wisdom. I am gaining all of this knowledge. I am learning how to
Yeah.
thwart, my stress, my anxiety. I'm dealing with my anger. I can help other people do that. If I can do it and I'm learning all of these techniques, then I can help other people do that. And so I thought, I'm helping people. And
Mm.
that's what made me start my New Age business was I thought I'm going to help so many people. I'm going to help them break free from feeling angry and stressed out and burnt out and anxious and that everyone's walking around with a story that we don't know about. People are walking around in trauma that we don't know about. And I thought I could help people if I can impart this wisdom on them, if I could help them learn these techniques. And so I based my whole New Age business off of that and felt like I was really doing a good thing. I thought that I was helping individual people, but the collective as a whole as well.
Yeah. Andrew, do you have any thoughts? What are your thoughts now? What questions do you have?
Yeah, so in terms of thinking about how crafty like the devil is, it's the Bible tells us the Ten Commandments. There's two tables: love God, love neighbor. Right? Jesus Christ. What are the greatest commandments? He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and love your neighbor as yourself." Right? Summarizing all of the commandments of God. And it's funny how the devil likes to take those things and then twist them in order to actually hurt your neighbor. So like, what was the mentality and the thought process of thinking that communicating with the dead could help your neighbor?
Well, I thought that if people could get comfort, if they could be comforted by knowing that their loved one was in a better place, because grief is such a hard thing. And I think until you've actually experienced grief. It really is hard to wrap your arms around, even when you're in it. Grief isn't linear. It's so messy. It shows up in spaces that you don't expect it to show up. And so I thought if I could help people and comfort people by connecting them with their loved ones who have passed, then how much comfort could I give them and maybe help them in their grief? So again, I thought I was helping people in that regard too.
Yeah. So walk us through, how was what you were doing then not helping people?
Because what I didn't know at the time was I was actually communicating with demons. I mean, demons follow us around. They know so much about us. And of course, if the devil can masquerade as the angel of light, then imagine what his demons are doing. They know everything about you. And of course, they can make things sound like the truth. So why wouldn't they tell me something that only you would know and your family member would know, that I could come up with and tell you that and make you feel comforted? Because then what does that do? In turn, it makes people seek the psychic. It makes the people seek the medium. So you start seeking these alternative occultic practices for comfort. You start seeking it because you want the answers and the comfort now. And so instead of going to God, they're now seeking me out, or they're seeking out a medium to tell them that their loved one is in a good place. And but what you're really doing is you're opening the door to allowing demonic activity and darkness into your life.
Yeah, like what it makes me think too, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, Jordan, is the Bible says first comes death and then comes the judgment, right? So thinking that you're able to speak with someone's dead relative, you're actually saying that all of God's revelation essentially is wrong. Because what we're told is we die and then we're judged by God. You're either clothed in the righteousness of Christ or you're condemned by your own works before God. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I've thought. Typically in my life growing up, when I hear of mediums and stuff like that, it's like, oh man, it's just it's information that's taking somebody away from the Word of God. But I can see how it is so enticing, right, to get this other form of revelation that will comfort not only your mind of what happened to your relative, but also comfort you in the future death that you will have eventually. Because one day you're not going to face the judgment of God because you're getting this revelation from someone who has passed on and goes somewhere else. How did you navigate that? Like, what did you do to speak with demons? Was there a specific ritual that you went through?
Yeah, I did something called channeling. And so this is where you would just totally empty out your awareness and allow yourself to be used as the vessel or the tool for a spirit to communicate through you. I also had what I called my spirit guide. And so to be honest, I can't even remember how this thing manifested, but I think I did some kind of ritual or spell where I called on my spirit guide to show themselves to me. And then it was every single time that I was doing something, whether it was divination, mediumship, spells, rituals, whatever it was, I would call on my spirit guide to show up and to guide me. And so I would then empty out my awareness and allow this spirit guide to take over and to speak through me and to give me the words. And I would do tarot and oracle card readings for people. I did it in my Facebook group live often and regularly. And in these videos, I mean, I would say things that I wouldn't know that. I remember specifically one time saying something about this woman who had asked a question, and I said something about new furniture coming in, and she was like, I have a couch being delivered today. And I was equating it to like emptying out, removing the old so that the new can come in. And I mentioned something about new furniture showing up. And she said, yeah, I have a couch coming today. Like, how would you know that? And so, I would often just say a chant or, what I called a prayer then, and just call on my spirit guide to show up and to speak for me. And it would not be me because I wouldn't know that someone has, a couch being delivered today. But I was used as the vessel.
I mean, it makes sense. And there's that weird realm I'm guessing that you lived into, where when we think of mediums, tarot cards, psychics, crystal ball gazing, that there's that realm of like fake fraud, and then there's the actual people who practice things. How did you have to navigate that in conversations with people when they're coming to you? It's like, look, I'm not a fake, I'm not a charlatan, I actually have communications. Like, what was that conversation like?
It actually was really easy for me because I would show up regularly in my Facebook group and I would do live readings. I would do live card readings so people would see that I was not faking and the things that I was saying were either true or real or resonated with them in some way. And so it gave me a lot of credibility to show up in that way. And I was coming on live all the time to do card readings, and I was coming on live all the time to do intuitive readings where people would just ask me questions and I would channel for them to get them the answer. So I didn't have to do much convincing.
That makes sense. And just for the listener too, because you've said some words, just to give definitions, can you define awareness? Like when you mean emptying awareness, and then define maybe the difference between divination and mediumship and some of the things that you were doing?
Sure. Awareness meaning, awareness meaning like you're kind of emptying out, almost like an out of body experience, but not like you're just kind of separating yourself. So, like I know that I'm here talking to you now, but I would just kind of empty my thoughts, empty my, if anything were coming into my mind at the time, try to practice mindfulness to just, okay, if that's coming into me, just let that go. Whatever would come into me, let that go until I felt like I was emptied out, and that I wasn't thinking about anything. So any awareness I had of the space I was in, the body I was in, of myself, I would empty that out. So that's what I mean by awareness. And then what were the other ones you asked me?
Yeah, like the difference maybe between divination and mediumship and stuff like that.
Yeah, divination is really anything where you're accessing the divine to gain some sort of insight into the future, or gain some sort of insight into either someone else's life or your own life. So basically playing God. So you could, divination could be anything from spells and rituals to channeling, or like I would use a pendulum, which is like a little crystal that hangs on a string or like a metal wire, and you would just hold the pendulum still and you would ask it questions and it would tell you the answer that you were looking for. So you're just gaining knowledge into the future or into life, insights that you wouldn't normally have is how I would describe divination. Mediumship I would describe as accessing, or at least trying to access the dead, and ultimately really communicating with demons.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I think that's helpful for the listener. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, very helpful. So I feel like we've only scratched the surface here. This is the first part of this conversation. Jordan, really appreciate you taking the time to really help us unpack this whole conversation, a very important conversation, and your story. So what we're going to do is that we're kind of talking about, you sort of went down this rabbit hole per se, realizing, thinking you were helping people, and sort of seeing, what was like, it appeared to be light. You'd found the light at the end of the tunnel, and you got a real purpose in life. But there's this dark side to all of this, and we're going to talk about that in the next episode. We're really excited to unpack this episode. So if you guys have enjoyed this conversation, definitely like and share this episode. Let us know what you thought. And as always, a program like this cannot continue without your support. So if you want to support Cultish, go to thecultistshow.com. You can go to the donate tab. You can partner with us, be part of the mission to change lives, as we are a 100% crowdfunded ministry. All that being said, we will talk to you all next time on Cultish, where we enter into the kingdom of the cults. Talk to you guys soon.